Welcome to the Veterans Summit, Justin Miller. I'm thrilled to have you here. And I have so many questions to ask you. From the first time I saw you was 2019 when you were testifying before the House Committee on Childhood Trauma. And I was so intrigued because you were a veteran. And that was not something that I had expected, because so many veterans, when I am listening and hearing their stories, they aren't talking a lot about their childhood or trauma in their childhood. And I was really moved by what you were saying. And so maybe you can just speak a little bit about your time in the service. You were in the Army for 11 years, is that right? And had 2 deployments, is that right? And then when you came home was when you started experiencing PTSD, problems with sleep, sort of I believe you had a traumatic brain injury that you were also trying to deal with, and children in the family, and integrating back into life after combat. So if you could talk a little bit about how it all came together for you, that you realized I need to get some help, that things are not falling into place for me now that I'm back home.
It actually wasn't even until recruiting. So after 2 deployments and self-medicating with drugs, alcohol, whatever I could get my hands on at the time and legally get away with. So a lot of prescription medication. But it wasn't until I was on recruiting that a gentleman that I just put him in the Army. He's a kid. He was one of those guys that he joined the Army. He lived at their station. You know, he would come and he'd hang out for hours, and loved the kid to death. And we were, you know, he was a good kid. And he thought it'd be funny to barricade me into the bathroom one day. And I tried to get out and it was locked. I was locked in, and I started panicking, and it kind of like sent me back to a time where we actually had to hide in the bathroom to protect ourselves from being surrounded and ambushed when we were kind of set up in a sniper hide. And I told him, I was like, dude, I said, you need to open this door now. And when he opened it, I said, look, I said, I've been places, I've done things that with me. I said, don't ever do that again. I said, or we're going to have problems. I said, it's not funny, and I don't appreciate it. Well, I went back and did some work, and then later on I had to go back to the bathroom, and when I did, he thought it'd be funny to do it again.
Oh, gosh.
And, this time, I remember coming out of the bathroom, and at first I was going to ignore it. I'm like, you know, this is just an immature kid. I'm just going to let it slide. He didn't even know what's going on. But when I came out of the bathroom, he just had this smirk on his face. And it was the same smirk that this guy had when he hit us with a V-bid that sent one of my guys home. That he had the same smirk on his face, like, yep, there ain't nothing you can do about it. And I don't remember anything after that. Next thing I remember, I'm sitting on the sidewalk with my station commander, and there's a pile of cigarette butts there, and I didn't even smoke at the time. So I knew something bad happened. I knew there wasn't anything good coming from the conversation I was about to have with my boss. And he said, look, and he goes, I don't know what's going on. He goes, but I can tell that you got some demons going on in there that need some help, and need some attention too. He's like, so I'm not going to force you to go, because that'll ruin your career. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go get help on your own. And I'm going to go ahead and keep this quiet and let you take care of yourself to continue protecting your career. I was like, all right, I appreciate that. So I go to the doctor, and a civilian doctor having no clue what they were dealing with. And I come in and start telling my stories and what I'm dealing with, the pains and the mental struggles. And God, I feel sorry for that lady. She probably had absolutely no clue what was coming when I walked into that office. So she did what she knew best. I mean, just she sent me off for testing for the trauma, which then, because I told her, I was like, I'm having struggles, focusing. I can't remember anything. I'm having these headaches, trouble sleeping. Well, they tested me, and they diagnosed me with ADHD combined type, which means I couldn't focus and I couldn't sit still. So they put me on Ritalin and had me on the max dose of that to just kind of keep my thoughts together. And then they put me on basically Percocets, take as needed, and Flexerol, take as needed. And she would give me like 90 of them for the month, and within a week to 10 days, I'd be calling her back up, and I'm like, hey, I'm empty. Well, I just gave you 90 of them. Yeah, but you said take as needed, and that's how much pain I'm in, and I'm out. I need more. And she would, okay, no problem. And she would just refill them. And that became my way of just numbing things. Most of recruiting, I was suicidal just because in recruiting, you have to be around people. You have to be in crowds. And crowds is one of my biggest anxiety points. Being infantry and being on the ground and being in crowds when engaged, that it would just always have me on alert. So for 3 years on recruiting, my anxiety was through the roof, and nobody understood. Like, I didn't even know how to explain it. People would ask me why I wasn't doing right. My excuse was not that I was struggling. My excuse was, well, I'm infantry. I don't belong in recruiting. I hate it here. I want to go back to war. I'm meant to deploy. And my whole reason behind that was I was hoping that I would be deployed and get taken out. Because if I was taken out in combat, then my family would, remember me forever as a hero that was killed fighting for their country, instead of me fighting and battling in my head every single day and end up becoming a statistic, because I just knew that was the road that I was heading down because of the misery I was in, and because the only way they knew to help me was to fill me with pills.
I'd love to stop you there for 1 second, because that is something that is so familiar. Hearing that, why should I go? They're just going to give me a bunch of pills. I'm going to be zoned out. I'm not going to be able to function. And that it's really sort of a medical treatment of something that is physical that's going on with you. I mean, you're being triggered and you're having a reaction in what you're thinking and what you're feeling and what you're experiencing with the crowds and the anxiety. But the solution is sort of a check this box. Let me diagnose you with some mental problem. It's just like right here, this what they're looking at, and not taking in the whole person, the whole experience, it sounds like to me. And that is going to result in more self-medicating, because you're going where you think you're supposed to go, but you're not getting the result that you need. And that's compounding the problem for you. And in many cases, I hear, veterans are on, 15, 16 drugs. Some that are, you're not supposed to take together. So I'm very interested in how you were able to get out of that kind of treatment and say, this is just not working for me at all. It's making it worse. Was there a point at which you said, this is not it?
Yeah, well, a long story short, it took me actually going back to Fort Stewart, and then it took me being injured and being stopped from deploying. And then that's when I kind of realized how much was actually wrong with me, that I've been hiding this whole time. My wife caught me out in the garage in the middle of the night, a pistol on my workbench. Not that I was in a suicidal mind state at that time, but I lived in the South. We had snakes all the time, so I tend to have a pistol on me most time. But she came in that night, and it's like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was still drinking, had a fire going, the pistol was on the workbench.
And were you
freaked her out.
finished? Were you finished your service at that point? Were you?
No, I was. Yeah, I was active at Fort Stewart.
Okay.
They told me I wasn't deploying at that time, so I was rear D, and all I knew how to do was to drink and numb the pain. And I finally ended up going to Laurel Ridge, and so when I got to Laurel Ridge, my regimen, I would wake up, I would take a Ritalin, I would take an MS-15, basically a morphine version. I would take 60 milligrams of Norco, and so I was taking Ritalin 3 times a day, Norco 3 times a day, MS-15 3 times a day, and then I was taking Ambien CR on top of that to go to sleep. And I was actually in treatment, and during the treatment, if you went to, I think it was like 3 AA meetings while in treatment, then you were authorized to leave campus to go to an off-campus AA or NA. So I was like, well, hell, if I can get out of this place, then it gets me a day out of here. So
yeah.
I do those, and I go off campus. They're like, oh, A is in this building, A is down this building. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? And the people there were like, well, NA has, drinks and sex. And I'm like, well, that's where I'm going to the drink machines. And I get there, and they go around and they start introducing ourselves. And everybody's like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm an addict, and I've been clean so long. And it comes around to me, and I'm like, Miller, I'm a recovering addict, and I'm like, and I've been clean. And then I just stopped there because I had this, and I'm like, I said, I'm lying. I said, I'm not clean. I'm full of pills that I don't even know if I need anymore. But because I was in so much pain and so much misery prior to this, I almost had PTSD of coming off of it. Like, I was afraid to go back to what I was like without it, because it was such a living nightmare that I'm like, I can't do it. When I was there, I finally just told them, I'm like, I came back from that day, and I told my doctor and therapist, look, I said, I'm pretty sure I'm abusing all my drugs. I said, I'm pretty sure I don't even need it. I said, I don't know. Honestly, I have no clue if I'm in pain or not, because I'm so afraid to come off of it. I said, and I completely come off of this stuff and start clean, I said, I'm never going to know. I said, so I'm done taking everything at this point on. I said, I'm just refuse to take anything else.
Was that like a turning point for you, where you realized, what, I kind of accidentally here at this meeting, but I really am an addict? That where you started to really go, whoa, yeah, that's me. Was that kind of a moment where you really came to terms with it?
Yeah, because up to that moment, I thought, I thought it was going to be somebody else fixing me. I thought the Army would fix me. I thought the medication was going to fix me.
Sure.
I thought they were going to give me this pill that was just going to make it better. And it was all better when they had me on these pills, because I was numb. I wasn't feeling anything. So no longer was I feeling the PTSD or the fear or the nightmares, but I was no longer feeling love for my kids or empathy or compassion or anything. I was just completely numb and I was zombie. And one of the biggest that I realized is, there were days, sometimes even a whole week, where how was your week? I don't know. How was your drive to work? I don't know. It sounds like I was on so many drugs at this point that it's freaked me out, because I'm like, man, I'm driving almost an hour to work, to and from each way,
Right.
and I'm not even remembering it. And I'm going through this full day of the work. I'm like, these guys are willing to sacrifice their life to protect this country. And here I'm not even remembering a whole week worth of me being a lead supposed guiding these people. Like, I am robbing these soldiers of what they deserve. Like, they deserve a leader that has it together, that can give them 100% of their attention and train them and give them the best opportunity to make it as possible. And I can't do that. And that's when it hit me that I'm like, I am better off not being in the service. As much as I wanted it, as much as I could lie to myself and say that I needed to stay in, when they threw the med board at me, I was going to fight it. And I had a serious look in the mirror one day, and I'm just like, can I honestly lead these guys? Can I honestly train my men and be comfortable taking them into combat and coming home alive with them? And the honest answer was no. Physically, go ahead.
That is so incredibly brave. And to be in that state of mind where you were drugged up and numbed, and for you to come out of that enough because you care about your service. That's a true warrior, to be saying, I am responsible. And that is a real sacrifice. That is truly saying, this is in the better good for my men. And that is just really remarkable, Justin. Really amazing. Good for you.
Yeah, that was a hard point in my life, because I realized that I realized at that point that I was messed up, and what really hit me was when I came back and they're like, we're med boarding you, and I was like, no, I'll fight it. And my brigade surgeon said, she goes, you can go ahead and fight it if you want. She goes, but the president has decided to cut 10,000 E6s. And she goes, I've marked you non-deployable, so we don't need you anymore. She's like, you can't deploy, you're kind of useless for the Army. And that was like, that hit me. I'm like, wow, I was literally just told that I am nothing. That the only reason the Army needed me was to send me to combat to die, pretty much, is what I heard from that. And I heard that I wasn't even good enough to go to war for my country. And
wow,
that made me feel like completely broken.
It was a lie. It was a lie. It was a lie, what they told you. But because they failed to give you what you needed to be helped, they let you take the fall for it. They said, this is your issue, instead of recognizing, no, it's their issue that was created by being in the environment you're in. And that's something that I hope will change, that will really change. Because for you to walk away feeling that way after dedicating your service, your life, and taking that really brave step to say, I've got to make a change so that I can, do right by these people, but do right by my men and women. As I said, that's a true definition to me of a hero and a warrior. Absolutely. And I'm sorry they did that. I'm sorry they did that.
It's part of my journey, and it's made me who I am. So, it was painful.
Mm-hmm.
It was a low point, but one thing I've learned throughout this journey is some of my best lessons learned have been in my lowest points.
Mm.
Whether they were lessons I learned of others or lessons I learned about myself. But it taught me a lot. It helped me, push through. And,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of when I realized that there's nobody out there that's going to fix you or take care of you other than yourself. Others are going to be there for you. They're going to have your back. But it's just like getting in physical shape. I can't just sit on the couch and watch other people at the gym and hope to have a ripped beach body.
Mm-hmm.
You therapists are like the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Getting this help is you can, repetitively going to the gym, muscle memory, brain memory. You're doing the same thing. You're working on yourself. You're going through these things repetitive. You're talking about the story, which is now taking the power away from the story and giving you power over the story. So it no longer has that same effect over you as it did in the past, where before I talk about it and I would start feeling the whole body just start to tense up. I wouldn't even notice it until Save a Warrior, and I started learning meditation. And I'd sit there and meditate, and he'd be like, all right, go from the top of your head and work your way down. Are you relaxed? Is your head round and scrunched? Is your tongue on the roof of your mouth? You're clenching your teeth, working your all the way down. And as I go down, I'd be thinking, you've got all these stories that are going through your head, but I would realize that, I'd clench teeth, my tongue would be pushed on the roof of my mouth, my forehead would be, scrunched up, my chest would be tightening and pulling, biceps would be tight, my legs would be tight, my feet would be vibrating, and knees would be bouncing. And that's the type of stuff that it would overwhelm me. And,
Mm-hmm.
The more you work at it, the more those effects started going away. The more the reactions on my body would start, I would be able to basically control it. It would just have less effect on me because
Mm-hmm.
now I realize that I survived. That
Right. Can you talk
it's no
about that
longer.
transition from the place that you were to getting to Save a Warrior, where you started getting the kind of treatment that was effective to you? I know we talked about you're having a very dark night, it sounds like, and your friend Chris reached out, and that's when you started talking. It's my understanding that you had this long conversation and
Mhm.
started to let stuff out because you were talking to somebody who understood what you were talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. When I got out, I thought that, kind of like when I was saying earlier, when I came back more, it was all over with. I thought all the trauma was going to be just gone and left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the same thing. I was like, oh, well, I'm out. I don't have anything to worry about. I'm good. I'm free.
Mm-hmm.
Life is good. And then I got out and it wasn't. It was still all there. The nightmares were still there. The anxiety was still there. The depression, the anger, the fear, the defensiveness where we were taught, to be in combat, where if they don't do what you want, we're supposed to react. And so I was still having all that. And when I would try to talk to people, when people would ask, what's going on, and I would try to explain it and tell them about it, they'd look at me like I was crazy. Like, there's no way. What movie?
These were they non veterans that you were talking to that didn't understand? Yeah.
Yeah, just a lot of civilians that that I just happened to be around, and they didn't have any clue, and they would just kind of look at me like I was just making stuff up or repeating a movie. And I didn't want to talk to my family about it because I felt that if I talked to my family that I was going to traumatize them. I felt that I was going to warp their mind, that they were going to look at me different, two, that I was now going to put all of these images and these graphic memories in the head, and that they were going to now look at me different. And that was my fear. So I would just compartmentalize. I shoved it all in. I just packed it away. I heard what the Army sucking up, water drive on. I just kept hearing it in my head, figure it out, deal with it, and I kept trying. And then the VA finally cut me off of medication because I was still taking Ritalin. And at this point, I was taking Klonopin for the anxiety. And I went to the VA one day, and they were just like, you can have one or the other. And I'm like, well, if the Ritalin helps me with my brain injuries, I was like, so that helps me actually focus. I was like, I'll stick with that. I said, how are we going to work? Wean me off the Klonopin. They're like, oh, we're not. That's it. You're just done. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. I've been taking this for, over, well over a year now. I need to be, no, you're not getting weaned off. That's it. You're done. You just don't get any more. Yeah. And that's what led me that's what almost killed me. I went into a 10-day spiral where, now, I'm sure the withdrawals didn't last 10 days, but the withdrawals made my nightmares so realistic that I was afraid to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Because if I was asleep, I would have these reoccurring nightmares, which would bring back the worst experience of my life when I was left behind, when I was surrounded by hundreds of Iraqis with 60 rounds on me. And I had the decision to either be captured and killed or fight for my life and do whatever I had to do to get out of there and get back to my men and continue living my life. And I would fight. I would watch TV. I would lay in bed and I would fight it. And I'd wake up from a nightmare completely drenched, and I would turn the TV back on and I would try to stay awake. So I was getting on average probably 2 hours of sleep a night, and they weren't even consecutive. Just be 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there. Maybe I get an hour, maybe 2 hours at a time if I'm lucky. And the final nightmare, I got left, and as I was running back, when I turned right and the gun saw me, this time when I turned right, they already went around the turn and I hit. Well, when I got hit, I thought I jumped up. I thought I was awake. I felt like I was laying in bed, covered in sweat, like normal, and then I started blinking my eyes to get my vision to clear up. And when it did clear up, I guess because I started blinking and I was so tired, I just fell back asleep. But I was now in front of a camera, bound to a chair. And that part of the nightmare, just when I came awake from that, I was nauseous. I had to run to the bathroom. I was getting sick. It was the worst fear of my life happened in that nightmare. And I just came and sat on the edge of my bed, and I was like, I just can't handle this no more. I'm like, I'm just so tired. I just want this to end. I just want to go to sleep and just peacefully be able to get a night of sleep. And at that moment, I just wasn't mentally. I just wasn't I wasn't there. Really looking back at it, I just mentally wasn't even in my mind because I've only been getting 2 hours of sleep. So I was out there. It was like I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. And that's what's scary to me, because the only thing that stopped me from from killing myself that night was sitting in bed, and I literally was like, I'm not pulling this trigger twice. So I cracked the chamber open, and I saw that the chamber was empty. And at that moment, the thought that went through my mind, which was, if I rack around in this chamber, it's going to wake up my wife. She's then going to ask questions, and I'm going to have to talk. And I wasn't ready to talk to my wife. So I put the pistol away, and I went and sat on the couch. What type of sense does that make? Waking up my wife racking around in the chamber, but yet I was willing to pull the trigger on this, that was going to completely wake up the whole house.
Yeah.
I was willing to do that. Racking around the chamber would wake her up. So, I mean, just goes to show you that the mindset there was just, when you get that far out of it, sometimes you just need to get the help.
Yeah, but that saved your life.
Yeah.
The thought that you didn't want to wake your wife up on whatever level that came in, that saved your life.
It did.
Because it was shortly after that, wasn't it, that Chris called?
Yeah, it was that, because I spent the rest of the night on the couch watching TV, and every time that nightmare would come back, I would start hyperventilating. I would just emotionally just start breaking down, and I just trying to deal with it. And every time I'd break down crying, I would put a tip in. I'd go light a cigarette up. I'd do anything I could to get my stuff back. And after about the 5th time, I was like, I can't do this. I called the VA, and I told them, and I'm like, look, I said, I about killed myself this morning. I was like, I really need help. Another night like last night, I said, I promise you I'm done. I'm just not doing it again. And she put me on hold, and then came back and scheduled me an appointment for 2 days later. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I said, well, I appreciate it. The one organization.
You don't have 2 days.
Yeah. I didn't have 2 days at that point.
No.
I just felt abandoned at that point. At that point, I felt more alone and more set up than any other time in my life, because I'm like, wow, the one organization that was designed to have my back just threw me to the side, like, whatever, we'll talk to you in a couple of days if you're still here. And I was like, thanks for having my back, and I just hung up. Nobody called to check on me. Nobody came to check on me. I didn't even end up going to the appointment, and nobody ended up checking on me.
Wow.
I hung up, and after I hung up, literally like 30 seconds later, I got a text message from Chris saying, hey, I'm doing this. I got this project going on.
Can you explain who Chris is? Just 1 second, so that people who are hearing this will know the relationship that you all have.
Yeah, so I was in the Scout Sniper Platoon with 212 Infantry, and Chris Mercado was the mortar platoon leader. Him and I got close, preparing for the deployment, and then just before the deployment, they pulled him up to battalion or brigade. So I didn't end up seeing him for the rest of the deployment, and then the very end, we did 4 days out. We did a 4-day sniper mission, came back for 18 hours, and went right back out for 4 days. And he was on those missions with us, and him and I sat up on the rooftop the whole time, and we would just talk. So we became really good friends. A good mentor of mine. He's the one that got me into college. I was working towards green to gold. So he was always a mentor, always, was one that had good guidance for me, was always there if I had any questions, and was always honest, brutally honest. And so he's like, I'm in this course. I got a bunch of young guys, young kids that are eventually going to be our leaders. And I'm trying to create a course I'm trying to basically figure out a commonality of what is behind our warriors that are not only joining during a time of war, but are going to war and re-enlisting and willing to voluntarily go back again and again. He said, so I'm trying to find this common trait, see if there's anything out there. That was his way of getting me on the phone. He saw that there was the downward spiral. He just needed to get to me to get that conversation started.
Mm-hmm.
So we get on the phone, and he asked me, he's like, how's things going? And I was just like, well, I said, not good. And he said, yeah, I could tell. He's like, I could see things are going kind of rough. He said, I got to be honest, I hate to ask you this, but you thinking about killing yourself? And I just started laughing. I said, man, I said, you have no idea. I said, if my pistol was loaded this morning, I said, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a long talk. And what finally hit me and made me completely change my mindset was, he asked me, he said, why'd you join? And I said, to serve my country, to protect the ones I love, And he says, okay, well, while you were in, you said the government paid you, right? I said, yes. He said, all right, well, they medically retired you. And he goes, and now the VA is paying you, correct? I said, yes, sir. He said, okay, well, then quit looking at it as the Army kicked you out and don't need you anymore, and look at it as the Army couldn't use you that they needed you to, but could see that the VA could use you in a way that the Army couldn't. So now look at it as the VA is paying you to take care of your brothers and your sisters. He goes, your story needs to be told. Your story is going to save lives. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I don't have a story. So he's telling me this just to try to make me feel better about myself, try to get me to get out of my head, whatever. It is what it is. And I just kind of blew it off, procrastinated like usual, didn't want to write it. And my mother-in-law finally, she was like, basically begged me to go to church with her. And as angry as I was about, angry at God, angry at the world, how could there be God with all this stuff going on? If there really was a God, none of this would be happening. He wouldn't let me see all this. Through God, he would have just let me die over there and not suffer. So I go to church to basically, I'm like, look, I'll go to church if this shuts you up and you quit asking me to go. She goes, okay, one time. You go one time, I'll leave you alone. I'm like, all right, fine. So I go and I'm at church, and I'm getting madder. The longer I'm in there, the madder I'm getting because I don't want to be there. And I finally just start going off on God. Not out loud, but in my head, I'm just like cussing him out. Like, how dare you? You say you're there for us. You say you're all this good, and if that was true, you would have, all this crap wouldn't be happening. If it was true, I would have died over there. I said, if you're really up there, I said, you'd strike me dead now. I said, but look at that. I said, I'm still here. I said, so you don't even exist. And at that moment, it was like somebody was literally whispering over my shoulder, and I heard, quit feeling sorry for yourself. Look at everything that I pulled you through. What good is it to have an answer to a secret if you keep it a secret? Share your struggles and your hardships to give others hope and strength to pull forward. And I looked over my shoulder because it felt
That makes you a believer.
yeah. And I'm just like, what the crap? And I just kept hearing it. Share your struggles and hardships with others to give them hope and strength to pull forward. And that's when I heard, Chris, your story is going to save others' lives. You need to share it. So then I'm like, well, crap. Now I have to go home and write my story. And I went home, and it still took me months to write. And, and I wrote it, sent it to Chris, and he come back like a day later with a finished product, which I don't know how he does. He's like a genius level person that can multitask multiple things that are above my level. It's crazy. But anyways, he comes back with this and he's like, I read it, and when I read it, it even crushed me. Like it brought me to tears, and my wife was in tears. I mean, everybody that read it was in tears. It's like, well, then I think we did a good job. He's like, I think we should get this published. And I'm like, whatever. Yeah. So if you can get this published, I said, go for it. Looking back now, I wrote my suicide note. That's what he wrote. I wanted everyone to know why Justin quit, why I was no longer pushing forward. I want everybody to know the struggles that I went through, the struggles that I was dealing with. And he told me, he said, once he said this is getting published, he said, expect 300 to 400 people to read it. He said, it's so long that, not many people want to stick to a reading that long anymore. He goes, but that's 300 to 400 lives that you've positively affected. He goes, so, those might be the 300 to 400 that need to hear it. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I said, it is what it is. And he emailed me on like a Thursday saying, hey, it's published, it's live. I didn't get it till late that night, so I waited till the next morning, and I messaged him. I'm like, dude, how's it going? And he's like, man, he goes, you're not going to believe this. He's like, but we already have over 1,000 readers. And I'm like, get the heck out of here. I'm like, no way. And by the end of the weekend, we were like over 5,000. And I'm just like, holy cow. I'm like, what the heck? And then I started messages like, hey, I read your story, and I want to thank you because I now know what my loved ones are dealing with. And hey, I read your story, and I want to thank you because I now know I'm not alone. That helped me get through the night. And that's when it hit me like, wow. If we want to see a difference, it's going to take us doing something. Right. We are the ones that we're the only ones that can change this. Right. We're the only ones that can understand that what we're going through. No therapist that went through a course, that read a book, that has been stateside all their lives, they're not going to truly understand. They're going to be there. They're going to try to help us the best they can, but it's still going to take us being there for each other, having each other's back, being there anytime, willing to help. And that's where we came up with the Objective Zero app, because when my nightmare happened and my moment of darkness was at 4:00 in the morning, and in my mind I'm like, well, man, who am I going to wake up at 4:00 in the morning? Somebody's going to be really ticked off when I call them at 4:00. That's what you're thinking. You're already in a mindset. I'm at my lowest point ever. Nobody, I'm alone. So you're already thinking you're a burden to everybody.
Right.
So we created the Objective Zero app to be live. And we wanted to make it user friendly because it's the user that counts. So with the hotlines, you get whoever answers the phone.
Right.
If you're someone who deals with military sexual trauma and a male is the one that assaulted you, and you call a hotline because that's your struggle you're dealing with, and all of a sudden the male answers the phone, you're not going to open up. Right. You're not going to be able to say, here's my problems, I'm struggling, help me. No, right. You're going to probably go back into a deeper hole than you're already in, and go back in away from the world and try to struggle on your own. Right. So we wanted the app to be 100% friendly, user friendly, where that person can completely control who they talk to. So that person could get on, they could filter it out. I want to talk to a male. I want to talk to somebody who's in the Army, somebody who is infantry, somebody who went to Iraq or Afghanistan, somebody who's this age group. You can completely customize it the way you want. That way, when you connect with that person, there's more of a chance that you've walked and talked and seen and heard the same things, that there's right. a better chance that you're just going to instantly connect with that person, and that bond's going to be there where you two can openly talk and relate and understand what it is that you're going through at that time.
And that person is called an ambassador for the app, and people can sign up to be ambassadors. They are not They don't have to be a veteran or a mental health professional, but they are trained through a program that you all have made available. So you're not just getting somebody who is listening to you, you're getting somebody who knows what they're doing in terms of being able to help you with what you're going through, help you get through that. Can you talk a little bit about that, how you sign up and how they're trained? Like, how does somebody who has never been in the military know how to deal?
So first, you just go to your app store, whether you iPhone or Android, and just download the Objective Zero app.
Right.
And then once you open it up, it'll ask you if you want to become an ambassador, and it walks you through it. Create your profile, and then it starts you with a video. We've partnered with the VA. So the VA has provided the training that they provide for all of their employees and their staff, which is called Operation Save. So there's about a 20-minute video or so that covers, the basics, of signs and symptoms to look for, and, the basics of how to handle and deal with somebody. And then there's a 10-question quiz. You have to get all 10 questions right to become an ambassador. Once you've answered all 10 questions, you are now our base level ambassador. You now are able to answer the phones, text, or video chats. So that's phase one of our training. Then we have phase two of our training, which is through Psych Armor. We've partnered with Psych Armor. They've provided us probably close to 20 hours or so worth of courses that they provide for free. How to live with somebody with a disability, how to talk to somebody who is suicidal, how to live with somebody with PTSD and DI. All kinds of courses out there that just give you, better education with this community to kind of give you a better understanding. But anybody can download. Our only requirements is 18 or over. You can't be a sex offender, and you can't be a felon. So we are keeping a clean background, clean environment. We do monitor conversations on the back end. There's just numbers attached to it, but we keep to make sure that our ambassadors are basically responding or correctly dealing with the situation for the protection of the user, to make sure that their ambassador is not giving advice or abusing the ambassador, or vice versa, the ambassador abusing the user. And yeah, you just go to the training.
It's anonymous, right? So that, if you have been, let's say, sexually assaulted, I'm going to be talking to a victim's advocate in a couple of days, so that if they wanted to use this, they could put in certain information, make sure they were talking to a female and someone who would understand what they had gone through, but they wouldn't have to identify themselves so that someone could target them, because I think that's one of the greatest inhibitions for people trying to get help, is they don't want anybody to know what they're dealing with. So having it be anonymous is really great, and it's also free, right? Your organization is a nonprofit, a 501c3, so that's fantastic. You're being able to get somebody who understands you so that you can target it, and it's free, and it's at any time you need it.
Yep.
So it's not going to make you wait 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of our biggest things, is we
That's
said from
fantastic.
the get-go, we said, one, it needs to be instant and anonymous, so every user feels comfortable reaching out. Heck, that means you could be sitting at work as a user, your boss could be an ambassador, and you could literally be texting your
Yes,
boss. He has no idea who he's talking to, but you're sitting right there getting help at work, and nobody has any idea.
that's great.
Um,
And
and
it's
then
for
we said,
veterans' families as well. It's not
yep,
just veterans, it's for their families. So if
whole
a wife
community.
or, a child that's 18 or older needs some help for how to help their mom or dad, they could get on and get some help too, or advice.
Yep,
That's terrific.
yep.
Really, really
Wanted
great.
to make it available. So it's the whole military, active, reserve, guard, veterans, family members, um, caregivers, DoD civilians, and we said that we would never charge anybody. We didn't think that anybody should have to pay to save their life. Um,
Uh,
so we agreed that we would cover the back end costs. So we would figure out a way to make sure that it would be free forever. Currently, at the amount of users we have, currently it costs us about $24,000 to cover the calls, the text, and the video chats that we're going through.
and
Which
people can donate to the foundation to help defray that cost for you all that are picking it
Yep.
up, which is really, really great. Is it something that, like, if somebody had absolutely no affiliation with the military at all, uh, you know, let's say somebody who'd been having sex trafficking or something like that, is it something that's open to anybody, or it has to be something affiliated in some way or shape with the military? Is it, is
well, it's kind of a sticky area. Designed it and came up with the idea and raised funding for veterans and for the military community for this to be
Mhm.
designed. However, we believe in the whole belief of us is give support, get support.
Mhm. Right.
So when you download the app and become ambassador, we understand that you can be an ambassador, you could be good and happy for months, but then we understand you could have a bad day. So
Mhm.
our ambassadors are able to just go on the top of the map, and on the top of the map it says click here to be a user, or click here to give
Yeah.
help, or click here to get help.
Right.
And so our ambassadors can easily click to get help, and now they're on the app able to reach out to get help.
That's great.
Um, we're in the process of white labeling, or figuring out how to white label it so that our app will be available for other resources. We've been asked, for first responders is one area that's asked a good bit. For schools, for our students, just for like all the main areas that are, NAA. We've had a few
Mhm.
state level that are wanting to white label it.
And what does white labeling mean when you say that it opens it up to?
Yeah, so white labeling, there's a couple different ways. They can either white label it, or they buy a version of the app where we wipe it clean, and they can have it and it'll still function the way, but it just won't have all the resources that we have available for our veterans.
I see. I see.
Or they can do more of like a lateral white labeling, where they will be in the app, but they will have like their own link within the app. So, for instance, Save a Warrior. So Save a Warrior would be able to basically have their own filter within the app. But the only way to be able to see that is if you go to Save a Warrior, and then Save a Warrior would then give you a link. So
Okay.
then you could go and download the app with that link, and it would give you your own. So then when you would go on
Mhm.
there, then you could filter out and find everybody that went through Saw or Save a Warrior,
Mhm. Right.
or Mike Oaks, or
Mhm.
PTS Foundation of America.
Mhm.
Um, so
But
there's a
you're
couple different
finding
ways that
the that you're getting this big demand for what you've done, that there is this huge need, like you said, with
Yeah.
first responders and so many, that that is really fantastic. Really, really exciting.
Yeah, it's been mind blowing watching it grow, and that's what, like, I talk to people, and I try to remind them that, you know, telling their story is probably the most powerful thing they do. And I see people struggling, and I hear people that share the story, and I always thank them for sharing their story, for one, because it takes a lot of courage to step up and actually open up and publicly announce their struggles. But
Mm-hmm.
then I always remind them that, like, you know, just remember that your struggles now, that you are going to be somebody's shining light. You're going to be some guiding light that next week is going to help them get through that moment. Because look at it, I mean, I shared my story, which I thought was absolutely nothing, that had no meaning, no purpose, no anything behind it, because I thought I was a nobody. And that little tiny pebble that was tossed into a lake has now created an app that is saving lives. That just in 2019, over 7,300 people used the app, just shy of 20,000 text messages. I mean, that's, like, when I heard those numbers, I mean, it put me in tears. Like,
Imagine.
it's sad that there's this many people that need it, but then it's so heartwarming that, like, that there's now a tool out there that is free, that is
Right.
right there in people's hands. And I'm like, wow, people, this is actually going to be used. This is actually going to make a difference. And,
Absolutely.
like, so when it comes to COVID, you know, like, so last 2019, we had 7,300 people on the app, just shy of 20,000 text messages, and roughly it's like 1,200 hours of phone calls and video chats. COVID happened, and I want to say it's like around May, we ended up getting the numbers. We were over 15,000 users on the app. We had over 44,000 text messages, and we were over 200 hours of phone calls and video chats. Just goes to show how important social connection is, how important it is to stay connected. And this social distancing is our country forcing us to try to stay apart, when the most
Yeah.
important thing we have is connection, is that bond, is the community. You know, that's what is so amazing about the app, is it still allows us to keep the connection and that bond, and just gives a tool that wasn't there before, and now opens the idea and gives others visions that, you know, a simple idea, a simple vision can come to life and
Yeah.
can make a difference. You know, we've
Yeah.
been amazing. I don't know. It still takes my breath away at times. It still just be speechless to think of organizations that have reached out and wanting to partner, wanting to,
Yeah.
you know, use the version of the app. Unfortunately, we don't have any major partners provide us funding, but we have some major partners that are, you know, back, you know, supporting us. Like, you know, we got the V we're partnered with that pushes the app out and provides us the education. We're partnered with DoD that allows, you know, pushes out as a resource, and the CDC we've partnered with, and
That's
they're
great.
now, we've got there's a new thing has been implemented in the app now. So now there's actually a survey. So every time somebody uses the app, once they complete, it sends a survey to the user and to the ambassador. So this just gives us an idea, a way to give us feedback on, you know, how well is the app being, you know, how well is it actually being used, how well are the resources, you know, how available are they, what version, you know, what's being used the most, whether it's the text, the talk, or the call, you know.
Right.
basically trying to see who feels most comfortable reaching out to who, to try to narrow it down and key down to see, what are the most common used connections out there. But yeah,
it's very exciting. And what strikes me that's so amazing about the story is that, first of all, that you were brave enough to share it and tell everybody about it. But had you gone through with ending your life that night, had that call not come in, and you had not been able to talk this through, what you were doing is seeing there's a missing piece. There's something not right here that needs to get fixed. And you were uniquely qualified to do that. And that was what's so great. I mean, you went through the steps that were provided for you to try to help you, and they didn't. And the question is, well, now what? And, where are you supposed to go? It's like the answer is going to be drugs and talking to somebody that can't identify with you. And so you're looking at the problem right there. And then the conversation that you're having with Chris is providing, hey, this is what we need. We need to fix this gap. And, I'm just grateful that you are here, that you stayed, and that you got that message that said, you got to stick around and get this thing done and tell people. And being able to tell the story, being able to communicate, and being able to have someone hear what you're saying, understand what you're saying, is great medicine. It's just great medicine. And to provide that for free and to have it be available 24 hours, I mean, that's big. That is really big. And I certainly am thrilled to hear what you've done, and was so moved by everything you said and have done. So I'm another one whose life you have changed by all that you've done. And I want to spread the word everywhere about this so that more people will know and it will continue to grow. And if there's sort of like a last word of advice you could give, if somebody was in a situation like you and they're sitting at home listening to this video and thinking, I don't know how to get this done. I don't know how to, I don't know how to survive what I'm going through. What could you say? What would you feel if you were advising them about hanging on and realizing that you may be the solution to the problem and you don't even know that? So the person who's struggling may be the one who creates the app that saves lives. So how can you encourage them to recognize they can be part of the solution?
Oh, or just remind them that that your struggles now, that your struggles, if not talked about, could end up being your kids' struggles. And that was one of my biggest fears is, the military has become a family business. It tends to be passed on generation to generation. And if I kept my mouth shut and then my son or my daughter joins, they would be dealing with the same stuff that I was dealing with. And I couldn't live with myself knowing that my son and my daughter was dealing with those same issues and not having a resource. So what I would say is just to think of what you would want your kids to have if they were in your same shoes, so to think about that, we go to war so our kids don't have to. Well, the war is not just overseas, the war is here in the home front. I mean, look at all the suicides in schools. I mean, my God, we had a 12 and a 13-year-old last year commit suicide in our area. And I mean, that's just within a 20-mile radius of my house that I knew of. So I mean, my best advice would be to start the conversation, to communicate, to let your loved ones know the struggles you're dealing with, to let them know that it's okay to not be okay. That's part of life, that's the journey. You know, there's going to be struggles. There's not a life out there that's been okay 365, you know, for all their life. That's a boring life.
Right, right. And out of the struggle came this beautiful,
You know,
incredibly life-saving app.
yeah, miracles don't come from a perfect situation. You know, there has to be something tough going on to have a miracle. You know, so our struggles and us surviving through that is the miracle. And, you know, so us having that conversation and getting it started and not being ashamed of it, be proud of what it is that we've done. You know, lose the embarrassment, lose the shame, lose the guilt. Because you know what you're feeling, there's somebody else out there that's feeling the same thing. And if we don't do something about it, who is? Our
Right.
government doesn't. I mean, it's not that our government or the VA doesn't care. It's just that they have a million other things that focus on also. So if we want to see something done, we have to do something about it. Us, the lower level, the enlisted, the guys that have been, pounding on the ground that have lived it. It's up to us, the ones that understand,
Right.
that communicate, that can hear the story and say, dang, you know what, I can relate. I've been there. And then be able to share that light, share that wisdom that gives somebody else hope that, oh, dang, this person's been through the same thing. Well, if they've made it, then I know I can make it with their help. You know, those that are listening that think that they can't help, you know, download the app and get the training, and just being willing to listen, just being willing to say, hey, I'm here, tell me what's going on, and having a non-judgmental ear to just say, dump it on me. Let's talk about this. Let me jump down in that hole with you and let's fight together. You know, getting out of that, oh, you're crazy. Oh, you have something wrong with you. Yeah, guess what? We all have something wrong with us. We're all crazy in some ways. You know, it all just based on perspective. And you know what? We're the greatest nation in this world, and yet we're tearing ourselves apart. And you know what? That to me that hurts more than anything, because you know what? When we come together, there's absolutely nothing out there that can touch us.
That's right.
And that, like, we seen after 9/11 happened, and my God, there wasn't a house out there without a flag on it.
Right.
The pride, not whether you're white or you're black or you're Christian or you're Muslim or whatever. Nobody cared. We were American. We were proud, and that was it. And we came together. And it's now, it's like we have all this division. And it's like, we got to quit. Cares about all the who believes in what and who does this and who's male and female and cares about. Who cares? Love your neighbor. Accept your neighbor for who they are. Love others as I've loved you. And that is it. Just stick with that. And my God, this nation would be amazing. Life would be so amazing. Get off of social media. Put it away. Go out and just talk to your neighbors without a cell phone. I promise you, there's not as much conflict as we see going on. There's more community than there is this conflict. I stay away from my cell phone as much as possible, and I communicate with my neighbors. And guess what? We don't have issues. We all love each other, and we all are willing to do anything for each other. The only issues you see is what you see on TV, and that just gets people fired up and wanting to go fight some other fight. You know, I can understand if it's in your yard, deal with it. These people that are packing up and going to other states,
Right.
why? Why join a conflict instead of just loving your neighbors and worrying about taking care of your own neighborhood?
Yeah. Well, the more people that are coming forward and saying we got to join together to make the change. It's all grassroots. You know, it's all of us saying, I see a need and I'm going to step up. And you have certainly done that in a gigantic way. And I just, I'm so grateful, Justin, for your taking the time to talk to me, to share the story. I know this is going to bless so many people. And those that don't know about the app are going to find out about it and will learn more of your story and more of the details. But that was an amazingly brave act that turned out to save a lot of lives. And that's beautiful. So I thank you, Justin, for being with us today, and look forward to sharing your story with other people.
Well, thank you. For all of you listening, just remember you are loved, you are needed, and you are enough. Just keep on pushing through, keep getting up every day, and I promise you everything will come together. Just don't do it alone. It's no doing things alone. I promise you. So,
beautiful.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blessing.
I loved it. Blessing for me too. Thank you, Justin.
Thank
Take
you.
care. All righty. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you too.
Bye-bye.